Greetings everyone, Chipmunk here. This week I decided to look a little more closely into a film I happen to love. And that film is Last Winter We Parted. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, of course. Yes, Last Winter We Parted and the inspirations from which it came. I'll walk you through. This has an interesting history. The movie was inspired by a book, which was inspired by a short story, which, as it turns out, was inspired by yet another short story, and who knows where it all ends. Well, I certainly don't know, but I am going to take you back as far as I can. So let's start from the beginning. The genesis, as far as I know, is Uji Shui Monogatari. What I have here is from a translation to English done by D.E. Mills, University of Cambridge, 1970. This is where it all started. This book is a collection of Japanese, Chinese, and Indian folk tales. They all are from around the 13th century. There's no credited author, but in this case it's more likely an editor, like the Grimm brothers. There are 197 stories in total, some no more than a paragraph long. The one in question is how Yoshihide, a painter of Buddhist pictures, took pleasure in seeing his house on fire. Naturally, this is out of copyright, so I shall read the whole thing. Again, long ago, there was a painter of Buddhist pictures named Yoshihide. His neighbor's house caught fire, and when the flames threatened to engulf Yoshihide's house too, he saved himself by running out into the street. Inside the house, he had some pictures of Buddhist divinities that he had been commissioned to paint. Also inside were his wife and children, all caught there without even having time to dress. But Yoshihide did not give them a thought. He simply stood on the other side of the street, congratulating himself on his own escape. As he watched, he could see that the fire now had a grip on his own house, and he continued to watch from the other side of the street until the house was a noise of billowing smoke and flame. Several people came up to him to express their sympathy at this awful disaster, but he was completely unperturbed, and when asked why, all he did was to go on standing there on the other side of the street watching his house burn, nodding his head and every now and then breaking into a laugh. "What a stroke of luck," he said. "This is something I've never been able to paint properly for all these years." The people who had come to express their condolences asked him how he could just stand there like that. "What a shocking way to behave! Has some demon got into you?" they asked. Yoshihide, however, only stood laughing scornfully and replied, "Of course not. For years now I've never been able to paint a good halo of fire in my pictures of the god Fudo. Now that I've seen this, I've learned what a fire really looks like. That's a real stroke of luck. If you want to make a living at this branch of art, you can have any number of houses you like, provided you're good at painting Buddhas and gods. It's only because you have no talent for art that you set such store by material things." It was perhaps from that time on that he began to paint pictures of the curling Fudo, which even nowadays people praise so highly. Quite a story. I think there's a bit of a moral in there about maybe not getting so involved in your art. And someone who took that idea to heart and ran with it was the author Ryunosuke Akutagawa. There's even a note below the translation. This story supplied Akutagawa with the germs of his story Hellscream. Akutagawa really liked this collection of stories. He took several others to expand on, but Hellscream is one of the biggies. And this brings me to Hellscream by Akutagawa. First published in Japan in 1918 as part of a short newspaper serial, and later collected into a book of short stories by that author. It was first published in English in 1948. Now, I haven't read any of the other stories as they didn't have any bearing on this video, but I bought the book. I'm going to page through it and read those at some point. Akutagawa himself was an interesting duck, a smart fella who got into high school without having to take an exam just because his middle school record was that dang good. He loved literature, with English Lit being his university major, and he helped to revive the defunct student lit mag, Shinshicho. A few of his works were published in major literary magazines at this time, including Rashomon. He also began writing haiku, followed by the phase to which this story belongs, that of fleshing out old stories and giving them new meaning. Sadly, a stint as a reporter in China left him with an illness that affected him physically, and he never fully recovered. This, coupled with the mental disturbance of recurring hallucinations, which may have been a condition inherited from his mother, seemed to have been too much, and he passed away at age 35 on the second attempt to take his life by his own hand. Although recognized in his own time, his legend has grown over the years. Japan's most distinguished literary award, the Akutagawa Prize, given to, among others, Sayaka Murata, see one of my previous videos, is named for him. The story itself takes Yoshihide, who is still a selfish painter who thinks of nothing but his work, and it transplants him to the court. He has no family, except for one daughter, a young woman who is so sweet and kind that everybody loves her, including the man himself. She and his paintings are the only things he cares about. Yoshihide is instructed to create a folding screen depicting scenes from Buddhist hell. Being a realist, he utilizes his apprentices to recreate these scenes, subjecting them to various tortures, and basically being a real dick about it all. His mental state declines during all this, and it seems as though supernatural forces may be a factor. He cannot manage to complete one scene, that of a noble woman burning alive. And the Lord, which he serves, in the end manages to facilitate this by imprisoning his daughter and burning her alive, forcing her father to watch and complete his painting. After this, the father hangs himself, and not a real happy story. It is a definite point that the entire story is told through the eyes of a third party, a courtier who has no real allegiance to anyone in the story except his lord. Throughout the course of the story, the lord is obliquely shown to have interest in the daughter, and when she is found to be sexually assaulted, this is undoubtedly due to him. However, it's never proven, A, because he's the friggin' lord, and B, because the narrator is so loyal to the Lord that he would never even allow this as a possibility. So, therefore, we have an unreliable narrator in the first place. There are many layers to the story, and it's an impressive feat. Obviously, Akutagawa did flesh this out, but it's still only 46 pages long. Moving on from Hellscreen. Next up, we have Last Winter We Parted, the novel, by Fuminori Nakamura, published in Japan 2013 and in English the following year. Translation by Allison Markin Powell. This is 216 pages long. Now, I think it's interesting that when you look up the Wikipedia page for Hellscreen, this is not one of the works listed as an adaptation. Arguably, it is not. However, Hellscreen was inspired by Ujishuri Monogatari. By the way, Monogatari means story in Japanese, you're welcome. So really, Nakamura is just carrying on the tradition. This story is set in the present day. The basic plot involves a photographer who has been in prison because of the death of one of his models under suspicious circumstances. The perspective is largely first person. Someone comes in to visit him in prison and pieces together what happened. Talk about your layers. There are many twists to this, with the result that it's difficult to figure out exactly what happened at the end of it all. I read this a second time for this video, and I still didn't get it. For all that, Nakamura is an engaging and talented storyteller. I have read 2 other of his books. The Gun is exquisite right up to the perfect ending. Cult X was a little more than it needed to be. Still good. I will say one thing, his depictions of women leave me wondering. Well, he just comes across as one of those male authors who doesn't actually really know very many real-life female humans. Anyway, the other thing that's getting to me is this reviewer's quote on the jacket. Nakamura's prose is cut to the bone lean, but it moves across the page with a seductive, even voluptuous agility. Richmond Times-Dispatch. Do you need a moment with this book? Should I leave the room? Anyway, where this book gets confusing is when the author gets perhaps a little too clever. As I said, there are many twists and turns, and I won't really give any spoilers. It'd be difficult to know where to start. But one thing I will say is that at the end it is revealed that we have had, through the whole book pretty much, we have had not one first person, but two first person perspectives. And these two people eventually meet up at the end and square off against each other. I, for one, found that incredibly head-spinning and not necessarily in a good way. It is a neat idea, though, and I give this one full points for attempting new things narratively. I'm a big fan of the concept, if not the execution. I do feel the execution is improved, though, in Last Winter We Parted the Movie, 2018, directed by Tomoyuki Takimoto, 1 hour and 58 minutes. This part will have the most spoilers, as it's the property I am most familiar with and understood the most. This movie came out in January of that year, 2018, so I can only imagine that the book was optioned pretty much directly upon its release, which is impressive. That's an extremely quick turnaround time. Now, here's what I think is kind of cool. The book, in its written form, is the very definition of the unfilmable novel. There's no way it would ever work, and so the filmmakers didn't even try. Instead, they took the basic grains of the story and reworked it to tell that story in the same way as the book, but in a way that works for film. It's quite a feat. I found it really impressive. Here we have Takanori Iwata as reporter Kyosuke Yakumo. Photographer Yudai Kiharazaka, Takumi Saito, has just been released from prison due to lack of evidence regarding the death of a model at his studio. Yakumo believes there's more to the story, and brings his idea for a novel on the topic to the publishing house managed by editor Yoshiki Kobayashi, Kazuki Kitamura. He then uses this as a reason to gain interviews with Kiharazaka and his sister Akari, Reina Asami. Meanwhile, his fiancée, Mizuki Yamamoto, becomes estranged from him and is lured into becoming Kiharazaka's next model. References to the story hell screen are included in the story itself, as Kiharazaka is a fan of the story. He obviously sees himself in it, but also sees himself as above it. There's also a kabuki theater portion in the movie which may or may not depict this story. I don't know Japanese or kabuki enough to be able to decipher it. This movie is beautifully shot and excellently acted, with a very strong cast and crew working to be worthy of the budget. As to the plot, kind of the same as the book, there is a lot here that can be squidgy for some people. Violence against women, child abuse, etc. So, be forewarned about that. Now, to some spoilers. The movie is told fairly non-linearly, and they do their best not to make it obvious, so to those like me who weren't paying full attention the first time, it's extremely subtle, but without it the story would not work. Also, most of the action takes place in the first half, with the exposition and backstory happening in the second. And you think that would slow things down, but at least from my perspective, there are many twists and layers in that explanation that it keeps things really interesting. Suffice to say that the wicked parties get their comeuppance at the end, and revenge is had, but happiness is still elusive. I do like that our main character is no hero, even to the woman he loves, and that is shown and acknowledged. If you can deal with the squidgy things I mentioned, I really do recommend this film. Full disclosure, I am a fan of Takumi Saito, so I may be a little biased. I do consider this one of his best acting roles. But also Iwata, Asami, Kitamura, who has worked with Saito quite a bit over the years, and also Yamamoto, who is always a treat. Check her out in the sitcoms Tokyo Alice and My Love from the Stars. They're all just fantastic, and again, the cinematography is striking and the direction is tight. Did I mention I recommend this film? It is distributed by Warner Brothers, so you can find the DVD in the States if you look for it. If you're still unsure about whether you want to check it out, you can find the preview on YouTube. I'll include the link to that below. And that was my leap into the fiery waters of Last Winter We Parted, and all that from whence it came. Have you seen it? Have you read it? Are you familiar with Hellscreen and Akutagawa? Let me know in the comments. I will see you next week. It's been one heck of a week, hasn't it? I'm saying that every week. That's just how it is nowadays, I guess. So, but we got through last week. We will get through this week. Let's hang in there together. I'm pulling for you. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.